Hello, my name is Remy and welcome to my YouTube channel. I thought I would walk you guys through what the process of one of my watercolor paintings is. So you'll see I've got my paper cut down to size, and it's time after that to transfer my sketch. I definitely recommend light boxes. Back in the day when I was in high school, light boxes cost like $100. So I learned a lot of ways to work without them. A few years ago, I'm like, well, let's see how much they are now. Yeah, prices have come down. You can get a good light box on Amazon for like 20 bucks. Definitely recommend it. In this one, I'm going to be directly tracing it with pen onto my watercolor paper. This is the first time I've ever done this. I always trace it with pencil first. But I wanted to try this to make sure I didn't have any graphite on it, and it's the way I see most people using light boxes, and I think it turned out pretty well. So after my sketch is transferred, I then tape my painting down. So I just use plain old masking tape. This stuff is really old, so like really old. So it's not very sticky anymore, which works perfectly for this. After it's taped down, you'll see me messing with some Frisket or masking fluid. It is very smelly. It is very gross, and it is very difficult to work with. You can get it in pen form. I just like to use the bottle. You'll see that the bottle that I'm using is very old and, well, very gross. It's basically like a liquid rubber, so when you put it down, any water or watercolor that touches it is going to be repelled, so it's a great way to preserve the whites on your paper. The problem with it is it can make it harder for your painting to look fully integrated because you're gonna have some really harsh edges when you remove it. I only really like to do it for the background because the background's where I am the heaviest with my water, as you'll see. There's no point in covering all the parts that you want to maintain white, unless you're gonna like spray your whole painting, so you'll see that I only did the edges. When I'm doing a full painting that's gonna require lots and lots of layers, I tend to use the Arches cold press paper. The amount of water I use is very, very rough on paper, so I found that most papers just can't handle my technique, so that's why I use Arches. Then I'm going to come in with my watercolors. I use a variety of brands. I am a huge Daniel Smith fan. They are my favorite ever. They've got gorgeous colors, and they granulate, which is what gives you that kind of mottled effect. You'll see a lot of that, especially in the background of mine. I'm a fan of convenience colors, so I know color mixing. I know how to mix colors, but I like being able to just dive right into a pan, and they've got some really pretty ones. You'll see me using a mix of the Daniel Smith. I have a few of Senneliers, especially their lemon yellow. A few old Holland colors. You'll see that I use one of their colors for the peachy tone of her skin. I have a couple M. Graham colors too. The smaller pans are from Prima Marketing Incorporated, and I've got several of them. They are, I think they're marketed more towards like the hand lettering crafty crowd, and I would say they're student grade paints, but they are very good student grade paints. They can be a little chalky, especially the pastels. You'll see me especially use that in the hair. I use salt a lot in my paintings. You'll see it, especially in the background. It's kind of further pushes the granulation. It creates really interesting effects. Some tips I have to work with salt is use different types. I never could get effects that I liked with just like regular table salt because the grain is so fine. So I actually have 4 different size grains ranging from regular table salt to coarse sea salt to the fancy schmancy Malden sea salt flakes, which create really cool effects. And I find that a mix of the different types of salt gives me the best result. I could never get salt to work before because I am not patient. So you might wonder why I do watercolor, right? Having to wait for each layer to dry. Well, I don't. I use a heat gun. You'll see me using it in the video. It's this green little, just basically this green stick looking thing. It shoots out hot air, like several hundred degrees hot, like I may have accidentally set something on fire with it before, kind of hot. I prefer it to hair dryers because hair dryers work great, especially if you already have a hair dryer just lying around, but the force of the air is very strong, so it can actually blow your paint around. The heat gun is more directed and relies more on heat than air pressure for drying, so that's why I use it. So I used to lay down the salt and then use the heat gun, and so I could never get the salt to do the cool effects you'll see, but I have learned that salt just has to dry naturally. So it takes a long time, but if you can wait, it can give you some really cool effects. Going in with the skin tones, I love color. I love working with color, so I'm doing an underpainting of basically the colors I use with paler skin tones in general, so that's purple, yellow, and blue. If you look at skin tone, it's not a flat color at all, so having the underpainting gives it a lot of depth. You'll see that I'll then glaze it with a more peach color, and suddenly everything just kind of glows. It's a really cool technique. This is actually the first time I've done it with watercolor. It's how I've always worked with colored pencil, which colored pencil is where I got my start with art. You'll see me occasionally using white. I used it on the face and started to use it in the hair. The white I'm using is by Daler Rowney. It's called Pro White. It's basically gouache, which is a water-based gouache, so it's like an opaque watercolor. It will actually blend in with the colors, which makes it less harsh than something that's acrylic-based. So anytime I'm working with white, that's what I'm doing. It will take away some of the luminous glow that watercolor has. Watercolor has that because it's translucent, and the white of the paper, or whatever color the paper you're using, is showing through the paint, and that's why it looks like watercolor glows. When you use something opaque like gouache, it takes that away, but it's a great way to go back in and add some highlights, because I've also found that if I were to like mask off the highlights in the lips and the eyes, for instance, it turns out a little too harsh for me, and it doesn't seem like it blends into the painting. So that's why you'll see me using gouache. actually lost the footage of painting the lips. I was so upset because that was like my favorite part of the painting. It like just came so easily and just turned out so nice, and I of course managed to not film that one part. Going into the hair, I had a lot of problems. I actually learned a lot with this painting. Wanted like an icy blue color for the hair, and I just could not get the texture right with watercolor. I tried and I tried, and I know I can do dark colored hair with watercolor, but I just could not do it with the light colored. So you'll see me first attempting to fix it with marker. I used an Ohuhu marker. Not the alcohol based, but it's water based, so I'm able to blend it out. And then that still didn't give me the effect I wanted, so I went in with Prismacolor pencils. So going into the sun, I am going to do first a layer of yellow. I'm doing that because I'm going to go in with metallics on top of it. The metallics are not, the pigment grind of the metallics I use is not quite as fine. If I leave it white, at certain angles there's a risk of the white showing through and it looking splotchy. You'll see the palette I'm using with all the metallic colors. I actually made all of those. I make some of my own watercolor paint. I actually sell some of it in my shop too. So I'm going to use the gold primarily for the halo in the background and also her earrings. A little bit about this piece. I noticed that I'm starting to actually develop more of a visual vocabulary. The piece is called Desperate and Divine. And it's about just the urge and desire to feel a connection with something larger than ourselves, and how much we sometimes need to feel that connection. And I just really enjoyed painting this piece. I am very pleased with the fact that it looks more like a painting than a drawing. I actually come from a drawing background, so I'm used to like heavy line work and being influenced by Art Nouveau, a lot of flatter figures. So this was really a challenge for me and really pushing myself to do something a bit more painterly, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. As I mentioned, this is my first video. I'm new to YouTube, guys. Woo! If there's anything you want me to talk about with my process, or if you have any questions about watercolor or anything you'd like to see me explore more in videos, please let me know. I would be more than happy to chat, so be sure to leave a comment below. My goal is to post a new video every other week to begin with, so be sure to subscribe and check out what I'm going to be doing in the future. My channel's mostly going to be about art, but there's going to be some videos mixed in about witchy spirituality stuff too, especially crystals, and possibly some mental health stuff. So if any of that interests you, be sure to subscribe to my channel. So yeah, Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope it was interesting. Please leave comments below, especially if you have any constructive criticism, because as I said, I am very new to this. So any feedback you have, I would love to hear it so I could incorporate it into future videos. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.